A small room, the lights are low, a young mother sits silently beside a cradle. But there is no baby inside. Instead, resting on a bed of soft fabric is a pale oval shell, warm, motionless, fragile. Every few minutes, she places a hand against its surface, feeling for movement that may or may not be there, waiting, not for cries, not for breathing, but for a crack, a single fracture that will change her life forever. Most people never think about birth. Not really. We assume it has always looked the same. A pregnant body, 9 months of development, a difficult delivery, a newborn entering the world. The process feels so fundamental that it seems inevitable. But evolution does not care about inevitability. It only cares about survival. And if a few ancient decisions had unfolded differently hundreds of millions of years ago, humanity might have inherited an entirely different strategy, one that would transform families, relationships, medicine, architecture, politics, religion, and perhaps even the way we understand ourselves. Because in another version of Earth, humans do not give birth. Humans lay eggs. At first, the idea sounds absurd, almost comical. People imagine giant chicken eggs, nests in bedrooms, parents sitting on couches protecting shells. But the deeper scientists look into the history of reproduction, the stranger reality becomes. Because egg laying is not some primitive mistake that evolution abandoned. In many ways, it was one of evolution's greatest inventions. Long before cities existed, long before mammals appeared, long before the first dinosaur ever walked across a shoreline, life faced a problem. A brutal one. How do you protect the next generation? The earliest animals simply released reproductive cells into the water and hoped for the best. Most failed. Most disappeared. Most never became anything. The future of a species often depended on chance. A current, a wave, a predator looking somewhere else. Then evolution discovered something extraordinary, a portable life support system, a biological spacecraft. A tiny sealed world carrying everything an embryo needed to survive, the egg. Suddenly, life no longer depended entirely on water. A developing animal could travel, wait, survive, grow, protected inside its own temporary universe. And for hundreds of millions of years, eggs conquered the planet. Reptiles used them, dinosaurs used them, birds still use them. Entire empires of life were built on shells. Meanwhile, the ancestors of mammals were following a different path, a riskier path, an expensive path, a path that would eventually lead to us. Most people assume pregnancy is the advanced solution, the upgraded version, the evolutionary masterpiece. That is not necessarily true. Researchers have long understood that live birth comes with enormous costs. A pregnant body becomes vulnerable, movement slows, energy demands increase. The risks multiply. In nature, vulnerability attracts attention, and attention often attracts death. Yet mammals accepted these costs anyway. Why? Because evolution noticed something strange. The safest place for an embryo might not be inside a shell. It might be inside another living body, protected by blood, protected by temperature, protected by an entire biological system dedicated to keeping it alive. The shell disappeared. The mother became the shell. And eventually, humanity emerged from that decision. But imagine the opposite outcome. Imagine that ancient evolutionary crossroads unfolding differently. Imagine our ancestors never abandoned eggs. Imagine the shell remained. Everything that followed would change. Not slightly, completely. The first difference would appear before birth itself. Today, pregnancy is largely hidden. Development takes place beneath skin and muscle, concealed from the outside world, but an egg changes visibility. An egg makes reproduction public, physical, observable. Imagine hospitals lined with incubation chambers, families gathering around shelves filled with developing offspring, parents watching faint movements inside translucent shells, not imagining development, witnessing it. For the first time in human history, growth itself would become visible, and visibility changes psychology. Researchers repeatedly find that humans form stronger emotional attachments to things they can observe directly. Now, imagine seeing your future child every day, watching fingers form, watching eyes develop, watching movement increase week by week. The relationship between parent and child would begin long before hatching. Yet another tension emerges because visibility creates attachment. But visibility also creates anxiety. A shell can crack, a shell can fall, a shell can be stolen, a shell can fail. Suddenly, reproduction becomes something physically separate from the body, something that can be protected or lost. For most of human history, parents have feared disease, famine, and accidents. In an egg laying civilization, every family might carry an additional fear: the silence of an unbroken shell. The longer it remains still, the louder that silence becomes. And this is where the thought experiment begins to reveal something deeper. Because the story is no longer about eggs, it is about dependence. Humans like to imagine themselves as independent creatures, self-made, self-directed, self-sufficient. But every human begins life completely helpless. Our survival depends on others long before we understand what survival even means. Egg laying would not eliminate that dependence, it would expose it. A shell sitting in a room becomes a physical reminder that existence itself is fragile, that every future life hangs suspended between protection and catastrophe, and civilization would organize itself around that reality. Entire buildings might be designed around incubation, temperature-controlled districts, protective technologies, specialized caretakers. Security systems built not around money or information, but around unborn children. The economy would adapt. The legal system would adapt. Even war would adapt, because throughout history, armies target what societies value most, and in an egg-laying civilization, the future generation would exist in a form that is visible, collectible, transportable, vulnerable. The implications become unsettling. A single building could contain thousands of future citizens. A single disaster could erase an entire generation before it ever hatched. For the first time, humanity would see its future gathered together in one place, not as an abstract idea, but as rows of silent shells, waiting, and perhaps that is the strangest consequence of all. Most people believe birth is the moment life enters the world, but if humans laid eggs, that boundary would become difficult to define. When does a child become a child? When the egg is laid. When the heartbeat begins, when movement appears, when the shell cracks. The question sounds biological. It is actually philosophical, because hidden beneath every discussion of reproduction lies a deeper mystery. What exactly are we? A body? A mind? A process? Or simply a story that begins before we realize it has started? The egg would force humanity to confront that question every day. A smooth shell resting in silence, a future person hidden just beneath the surface, not yet here, yet somehow already present. Waiting for the moment the world finally hears the first crack.